Before we begin, if stories of quiet love, healing, and unexpected kindness speak to your heart, please take a moment to subscribe. Your one click helps us keep sharing light, one story at a time. She hadn't spoken, eaten, or looked anyone in the eye for nearly a year until a janitor sat down beside her, blew a single soap bubble, and changed an entire world with nothing but silence. The marble lobby of Carter Biotech Tower gleamed like a cathedral, polished, perfect, cold. People walked through it with purpose, with badges and Bluetooths and pressed collars. But today, the lobby held its breath. The girl sat on the floor like a fallen statue. She was 7, pale blonde hair frayed around her face, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. She rocked, slowly, like a metronome measuring grief. Her eyes darted like sparrows against glass, wild and trapped. "No one touch her!" the security guard snapped, voice taut with something between panic and protocol. "She'll bite!" The executives, 5 of them in trim gray suits, stood in a hesitant circle, as if afraid she might detonate. One woman whispered into her phone, "Yes, it's another episode." Where the hell is her nanny? A silence deeper than quiet settled in. The girl began to hum, off-key, fragile, urgent. And then, from the far end of the lobby, came the sound of footsteps. Noah Bennett. He wasn't wearing a lab coat or carrying a clipboard. He pushed a janitor's cart with chipped wheels and a mop that had seen better days. His shirt was untucked. His boots were worn smooth at the heel. He looked like no one, and he was about to become everything. He froze mid-step when he saw the child. His hand tightened around the mop handle, not from fear, but memory. He knew that hum, not its tune, but its tremble. The rhythm of a child lost inside their own storm. He didn't ask permission. He didn't look at the blinking red security camera. He didn't care that half the top floor could see him. He just moved. "May I?" he asked softly, but the security guard stepped in front of him. "Sir, that's Claire Carter. The Carter. Her mother's the CEO. Last guy who tried to help got terminated." Noah's voice didn't rise. It softened. "I'm not here to fix her. I'm just going to sit." And so he did. He lowered himself slowly onto the cold marble floor, 5 feet from the girl. No sudden movements, no words. Then from his janitor's cart, he pulled out a travel-sized bottle of dish soap and a plastic straw. He dipped the straw into a small bowl of water from his mop bucket. He blew gently. A single soap bubble lifted into the air, shimmering with purples, blues, and impossible light. Claire stopped rocking. Her humming paused mid-note. She watched the bubble float, then pop. Noah blew another, then another. He didn't look at her. He didn't try to speak. He just blew bubbles, each one drifting upward like a whisper no one dared say out loud. On the mezzanine above, Elizabeth Carter, CEO of Carter Biotech, a woman whose voice had shaken boardrooms, stood in tailored heels and a slate gray suit, frozen. Her hands clenched the balcony rail. Her face was blank, but her eyes were locked on the janitor on her lobby floor, and on the daughter she could no longer reach. Claire reached out, not to Noah, not to touch, but to trace the path of a bubble with her fingers. Elizabeth turned away and walked to the elevator. She didn't slam the button, though her body burned with questions. When the doors slid open, she descended in silence. The elevator chimed. The executives scattered. Elizabeth stepped into the lobby like a queen walking through ash. Her gaze sliced through the air until it met Noah's. He stood slowly. "Yes, ma'am?" "Mr. Bennett," she said. "My office, now." His eyes flicked to Claire. She had laid down on her side, her cheek resting on the marble, her eyes following a bubble. I wasn't asking, Elizabeth cut in. Then to the security guard, call doctor, sure. Have him check on Claire immediately. She turned sharply. Her heels echoed across the floor. Noah followed. Her office on the 33rd floor smelled like steel, silence, and cold coffee. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, framing the Chicago skyline like a courtroom with no jury. Shut the door! He did. Elizabeth Carter studied him like a foreign object under a microscope, her arms crossed, her chin raised, her eyes dissecting. Who taught you that? The bubbles? The stillness? Whatever that was. Noah didn't blink. My daughter, Lily, she's 8. And my wife, he paused. She was the gentle one. I used to teach special ed. Before life got louder. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. Claire doesn't play, doesn't speak, doesn't respond, not to doctors, not to therapists, not to me. You blew bubbles and she lay down like she was in church. He said nothing. I want you to work with her, she said. He blinked. Excuse me? Once a week, twice if possible. I'll compensate you. I'm a janitor, Ms. Carter. I can change that. I don't need charity. I'm not offering charity, I'm offering a job. Noah let out a slow breath. What she needs isn't a job. Elizabeth's eyes flashed. She has the best care money can buy. Maybe that's the problem. The silence in the room hardened into something neither of them could name. Then he added, if I say yes, it's under one condition. Which is? No observers, no cameras, no clipboards. I don't work for you. I work with Claire, and only her. She studied him. Her jaw flexed once, then quietly. Deal. He turned to leave. What color were the bubbles? She asked, her voice oddly hushed. Noah glanced back. Blue, he said. Always start with blue. It calms the chaos. The door closed with a soft click, and in the office above a tower of science, stocks, and silence, the memory of blue bubbles hung in the air like a prayer someone had finally spoken. The elevator hummed as it descended from the 33rd floor. Inside, Noah Bennett stood quietly, his reflection flickering in the mirrored walls like a man caught between two worlds. One was marble floors and mop buckets. The other, a door he never asked to open, was now cracked just wide enough for hope to slip through. Downstairs, the lobby had emptied. The executives had retreated, the lobby's cold order restored. But something in the air had shifted, a kind of hush, like a song waiting for its second verse. Noah returned to his cart, pushed it toward the janitor's closet, and exhaled slowly as he closed the door behind him. He sat down on an overturned crate, wiped his hands on a rag, and stared at the wall. He hadn't expected her to say yes. 2 days later, he stood once again in the sleek private lobby of the Carter penthouse holding Lily's hand. Her backpack bounced against her spine, crayons clinking in the side pocket. This the big one? She whispered. Noah smiled. Yeah, this is the tall building where the air smells like money and nobody makes eye contact. Lily giggled behind her hand. The door opened before they could knock. Elizabeth Carter stood there, not in her usual sharp tailoring, but in a soft navy sweater and slacks. Her hair was tied back, her face unreadable. You came, she said. I said I would. Noah stepped inside. The foyer gleamed like an exhibit. Lily's sneakers squeaked once, and then stopped. The space wasn't made for children, or laughter, or stains. She's in her room, Elizabeth said. First left down the hall. Noah crouched to Lily's level. You good? Lily nodded, pulling a small sketch pad from her bag. I'll be quiet, she whispered, like air. Elizabeth watched the exchange, her arms crossed, but her posture softer than usual. She's very obedient, she said. She's kind. Noah corrected gently. Claire's room was immaculate. Not lived in, curated. Toys lined the shelves like art pieces, untouched. The curtains were white, ironed into perfect folds. But in the far corner, like a question mark in a palace, sat Claire. Her forehead rested against the window pane. She watched the city like it might evaporate if she blinked. Noah didn't speak. He walked to the opposite corner and sat down slowly, back against the wall. He pulled a small sketchbook from his jacket and began to draw. A circle, 5 stars, a kite. 3 minutes passed. He didn't look at her. When he set the sketch down beside him, he did it as if laying an offering at an altar. There was silence, then a shuffle. Claire crossed the room, barefoot and silent as snow, and sat beside him. She picked up the paper, examined it, then picked up a crayon from the tin he slid toward her, blue, always blue, and began to color. No words, no permission asked, but something sacred passed between them, weightless and true. Back in the kitchen, Lily sat at the island, legs swinging, quietly drawing a menu for dinner with the Bubble Man. Elizabeth busied herself filling 2 glasses of water. Not with a butler, not with a dispenser, with her own hands. "He's been in there 10 minutes, she murmured. And Elizabeth swallowed. She's never let anyone sit that close. Noah emerged from the hallway, moving slowly, carefully, like someone carrying invisible porcelain. "She drew with you?" Elizabeth said before she could stop herself. "She started the conversation," Noah replied, "but she didn't speak." "Talking and communicating," he said softly, "aren't always the same thing." Elizabeth looked down, then reached for her glass. "She was 2 when she stopped talking," she whispered. "Just stopped. One day she was naming colors and giggling at ducks, the next, nothing. No eye contact, no response, just gone." "What happened?" Elizabeth hesitated. "High fever. Reaction to a vaccine. They said it was coincidence, not causation. But I kept asking myself, did I miss something? Did I do this?" Noah nodded slowly. "Parents always do," he said, "even when it's not theirs to carry." Lily wandered in at that moment, holding up a drawing. 3 figures holding hands, one with glasses, one with a bun, one with curly hair. Above them, a single bubble. "I made this for her," she said, "but only if she wants it." Elizabeth looked at the drawing, her throat tightening. That evening, as they packed up to leave, Noah turned at the door. "I want to be clear," he said. "I'm not a therapist. I'm not certified. I don't use flashcards. I don't take notes. I don't diagnose. I show up. That's it." Elizabeth nodded. "You say that like it's small." "It's not," he said. "It's everything." The next Friday, they returned. No cameras, no clipboard specialists, just 2 girls, 2 sketchbooks, and a man who didn't mind sitting on floors. This time, Claire didn't wait 3 minutes. She met them halfway. That night, Elizabeth stood outside Claire's room, unseen. Inside, Claire and Lily sat shoulder to shoulder, drawing a sky filled with stars. Noah wasn't speaking. He was simply breathing beside them. Elizabeth leaned her head against the doorframe. She had tried everything: treatment centers, speech therapists, behavioral specialists flown in from Sweden. But no one had ever said, "Let her lead." And that was all Noah had done. Not fix, not force, just stay. Her eyes burned. Maybe, she thought, that's what love looked like when it finally learned to kneel. There are moments in life so quiet, you don't realize they're changing everything until they're over. Noah Bennett knew how to recognize them. They didn't arrive with applause. They arrived in the small curve of a child's back as she leaned closer, in the faint sound of crayon wax meeting paper, in a color. That morning, the sky over Chicago was washed with silver. Rain hovered but didn't fall. Noah and Lily rode the elevator to the penthouse in silence, their fingers lightly laced, father and daughter, both carrying something sacred in their palms. Time. The penthouse door opened before they knocked. This time, Claire was waiting. She didn't speak, of course, but she was at the end of the hallway, standing, barefoot, her blue dress wrinkled at the edges, eyes wide and unblinking, and in her hand, a single crayon, blue. Elizabeth Carter watched from behind the kitchen island, trying not to startle the moment. She hadn't slept much. The board had begun asking questions. Her PR advisor had left 2 voicemails overnight, warning her to manage optics. But this morning her daughter had brushed her own hair. That had never happened. "Morning," Noah said, his voice low, steady. Claire looked at him, then stepped aside. Wordlessly, she let them in. Lily smiled at her and held out a fresh sheet of paper. Noah set down the sketchbook. Claire didn't hesitate. She sat on the floor between them. They spent 30 minutes drawing, not a word spoken. Lily sketched a cloud. Claire added a bird. Noah filled the corners with stars. Then, in the center of the page, Claire drew a circle. Inside the circle, she colored only in blue, slow, deliberate strokes. She pressed harder the closer she got to the center, like she was pulling something in from the edge of herself. Noah watched her, not her hands, but her breathing. She wasn't holding her breath anymore. She was exhaling, slowly, purposefully. When she was finished, she held out the page, not to Lily, to her mother. Elizabeth stepped forward, hesitant, as if afraid even footsteps could break the spell. She took the paper with trembling hands. "Blue," she whispered. Claire didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, Elizabeth stayed up long after Claire had gone to bed. She sat at the kitchen table, the drawing in front of her, her laptop closed for the first time in weeks. She stared at the blue circle. Her mind wanted to analyze it, symbolism, regression, behavior mapping. But her heart? It simply ached. "I used to love blue," she said aloud. "I painted my first studio that color. Before the company. Before—" She didn't finish the sentence. Noah walked in quietly, having just helped Lily settle in the guest room. He poured 2 mugs of tea. "Still do," he said. Elizabeth looked up. "She picked that color for a reason," he continued. "It's not random. She hasn't made a choice like that in over a year. She's making them now." Elizabeth took the tea, her fingers brushing his. She didn't pull away. "You really think this is working?" Noah looked toward the hallway where the crayon drawing still sat in the center of the table like a centerpiece no one dared move. "I don't think," he said. "I listen. And right now, that color is a sentence." The next morning, Claire woke up early. She didn't cry when she saw the rain. She didn't ask for her iPad or hide beneath the bed. She walked to her shelf, picked up her crayon box, and removed only one. Blue. 2 weeks passed. Claire began reaching for the sketch pad before Noah even sat down. Sometimes she handed him a crayon. Sometimes she traced his drawings with her fingertip, like she was learning him through motion. Lily noticed first. "She matches you," she whispered one day. "Like rhythm." "She's listening," Noah said, "even if it's not with her ears." One afternoon, Elizabeth found Claire curled up in the corner of her playroom, drawing circles over and over in shades of blue. The paper was soft and worn through, but Claire didn't stop. Elizabeth crouched beside her, awkward, unfamiliar, out of place in her pencil skirt and silk blouse. She didn't say anything. She just sat. Claire paused, looked at her mother, and then, for the first time, offered her a crayon. Elizabeth blinked. "You want me to draw?" Claire said nothing, but her eyes didn't move away. With shaking hands, Elizabeth took the crayon and drew a single line beside her daughter's circle. Claire watched, then, slowly, added another line, touching her mother's. When Noah arrived later that day, Elizabeth met him at the door. "She handed me the crayon," she said, voice low. "She invited you in. I've been living in her house for 7 years, and I've never once felt invited." Noah smiled gently. "Maybe you were always there, but today, you showed up." That evening, Lily sat with Claire at the table. Claire was holding her crayon again, blue as ever, but her strokes had softened. The lines were longer now, less frantic, more curved. "She draws like she's making music," Lily whispered. "She is," Noah said. "Some kids talk in words, some talk in sound, and some talk in color." Elizabeth looked across the room, at her daughter, at the blue. "I used to paint," she said, "before I learned to write emails faster than emotions." Noah said nothing. He didn't need to. That night, Claire left her crayon on the edge of the kitchen counter. Not hidden, not locked away, just left. Like trust. The invitation didn't arrive in words. It came in the form of a drawing. One evening, after another quiet session of crayons and sketch pads, Claire slid a folded piece of paper across the floor toward Lily. On it, 3 figures sitting in a circle, small bowls in front of them, and in the center, a blue bubble rising like steam. Lily turned to Noah, eyes wide. "Is this dinner?" Noah looked at the drawing, then at Claire. She wasn't looking back, but she was listening. It rained the day they returned. Not the heavy, bruising kind, just a soft, steady drizzle that kissed the sidewalks and made the air smell like memory. Noah carried a tote with folded blankets, a Bluetooth speaker, and soft snacks packed in glass containers. Lily held a rolled-up paper menu she had made with glitter pens the night before. Cartoon grapes danced on it. A macaroni sun smiled in the corner. When the elevator opened to the penthouse, Elizabeth greeted them in bare feet. That alone felt like a miracle. Her blouse was cotton, her hair unpinned. She looked like a woman standing in her home, not a fortress. "You brought a picnic," she said. "For the floor," Noah replied. "Not the table." "Why?" "Because chairs put people in rows. The floor puts us in a circle." Elizabeth blinked, then stepped aside. "No shoes on the blanket," Lily warned cheerfully as they entered Claire's room. "It's a sacred space." Claire sat in the corner as always, but her eyes followed them now. Not with fear, with focus. Noah laid the blanket down over the carpet, smoothing out its creases with calm hands. Lily placed the snack bowls just right. Cheese cubes, crackers, soft grapes, peanut butter in a tiny dish with a plastic spatula. No smells, no sauces, nothing hot, only soft, only safe. From his pocket, Noah pulled the Bluetooth speaker, tapped his phone. A gentle melody filled the room. Debussy, as always. Claire de Lune. Lily opened her sketch pad and drew a table with no legs, just circles floating above the ground. Claire sat still, then shifted, then moved. She crossed the room and sat beside Lily without looking. Elizabeth watched from the hallway, one hand gripping the doorframe. Her breath caught. This wasn't therapy. This wasn't supervision. This was something else. Noah reached into the tin of crayons. He picked up a blue one. Slowly, he placed it between them, but closer to Claire. He didn't say a word. Claire leaned forward, 1 inch, 2. Then, without a sound, she picked it up and began to draw. For 40 minutes, no one spoke. The only sounds, the scratch of wax on paper, the hush of rain against the glass, and the melody looping through the room like a memory. Claire drew a circle, then another. Then a flower with blue petals and a yellow center. She paused, reached for a second crayon. Yellow. Elizabeth's eyes burned. This was the first time she had ever seen Claire choose a warm color. Lily broke the silence first, her voice soft as thread. Would you like a grape? She didn't look at Claire as she asked, just set one down gently on the napkin between them. Claire stared at it. Noah didn't move. Elizabeth held her breath. Then Claire reached forward. She picked up the grape and placed it in her mouth. It was such a small movement, such an ordinary act, and yet it cracked the air open like thunder. Elizabeth gasped, but caught herself. Noah turned to her gently. It's okay, he said, not looking away from Claire. Let it be what it is. Claire chewed slowly, then reached for another grape. Lily beamed. Twinsies. Noah exhaled. She hasn't eaten all day, has she? Elizabeth shook her head. Not yesterday either. She's choosing this, he said. This moment. This food. This stillness. Later, after snacks were gone and the music had faded, Claire placed her drawing in the center of the blanket. She had colored 3 figures, stick bodies, sure, but with detail. One had curly hair, one had glasses, one had a bun. She colored the bun figure's dress red. Elizabeth stepped into the room. That used to be my favorite color, she whispered. Claire didn't look at her, but her crayon paused, and then, so softly it could have been wind, she whispered, Still is. Elizabeth fell to her knees, not in drama, in quiet collapse. Her hand covered her mouth. Her shoulders trembled. Noah didn't move. He let it be sacred. Let it stay still. Sometimes healing wasn't a breakthrough. It was a whisper in the language only silence could speak. That night, while Lily and Claire sorted crayons by color and drew stars on the paper napkins, Elizabeth poured tea into 2 chipped mugs she hadn't used in years. I don't know how to be the kind of mother she needs, she admitted. You're here, Noah said. That's already more than most. She said red. She remembered. I didn't think. I didn't think I mattered to her anymore. Noah sipped the tea. You do. You always did. She just didn't feel safe enough to show it. Elizabeth sat down across from him, the steam from the mug fogging her glasses slightly. You know, she said quietly, I used to believe leadership meant always being the one who stands. But maybe Claire doesn't need a leader. She needs someone who'll sit on the floor. Elizabeth smiled, a tired, breaking, rebuilding smile. You always say things that sound like they belong in a poem. Maybe, Noah replied, because this finally feels like one. Some memories don't speak. They hum, soft, persistent, like the buzz of a street lamp that never quite dies, even in daylight. Claire's hum returned the morning after the dinner. Not the chaotic melody of panic, but a single note, barely audible, like a violin string tuned just slightly too tight. Noah heard it before he even entered the room. He stood quietly in the hallway listening, and smiled. She was remembering something. Elizabeth tiptoed behind him, holding a small plate of toast with jam. Not strawberry. Claire hated red. Not grape. She hated purple, too. Meyer lemon, sweet and gold. Like summer without the sting. She used to hum before bed, Elizabeth whispered. When she was little. What did she hum? Nothing I knew. But it always ended the same. Like a little whistle at the end of a dream. Noah nodded. That's how healing comes. Not with words, but with returning. Inside the room, Claire stood facing the window, a crayon in her right hand. Yellow. It streaked down the wall, not on paper this time, but directly across the pale paint. Lily gasped, half horrified, half impressed. She's painting your wall. Noah held up a hand. Let her. Claire was drawing a sun. Not just a circle with lines, but one with eyes, lashes, and a crooked smile. Elizabeth stepped forward instinctively, then froze. Her breath hitched. The smile, it was hers. Claire was drawing her mother's smile. Then suddenly, Claire's arm stiffened. Her whole body went rigid. She dropped the crayon and screamed. Not words, not syllables. A sound like air being ripped apart. Elizabeth ran, but Noah caught her wrist. Wait! She's in pain! No, he whispered. She's remembering. Claire backed against the wall, her small fists against her temples, eyes wide open and unfocused. Her hum was gone now. Only tremors remained. Noah knelt slowly, lower than her, almost lying down. I'm not here to stop you, he said gently, just to be here while it passes. Lily sat too, holding her doll, quiet, watching. And Elizabeth, for the first time, didn't try to fix it. She simply knelt beside Noah, tears sliding down her cheeks, her hand brushing the carpet. Not Claire. Not yet. Minutes passed, and finally, Claire's body softened. She slumped to the floor, exhausted, pale, but breathing. When she looked up, she didn't look at Elizabeth. She looked at Lily and whispered, "The yellow was on my shirt." Lily blinked. When? Claire closed her eyes. When it happened. Elizabeth's lips parted. Noah leaned forward. Can I ask, what happened with the yellow? Claire opened her palm. It was the day I screamed, and no one came. Elizabeth covered her mouth. Claire continued, I was wearing yellow, bright yellow. I thought if I wore the color of the sun, I could be brave. She paused. But the screaming never stopped. She wasn't talking about now, she was talking about then. The day she lost her father. In a moment that felt like glass cracking without breaking, Elizabeth finally understood. It hadn't been the hospital, not just the grief. It had been that day, and that shirt, and the yellowness of trying to be seen, and failing. Elizabeth sat on the floor. Her voice shook. I see it now, Claire. I see you. Not what I wanted to see. Not what I hoped would come back. But you. Claire didn't respond, but she didn't look away either. And Noah knew. That alone was a beginning. That evening, the wall still bore the yellow streak. Elizabeth didn't wash it off. She taped a frame around it, not a real one. Just paper. And below it she wrote in cursive, The day I was brave. When Claire saw it, she said nothing, but she picked up a crayon and drew a tiny blue heart beside it. No one mentioned the blue heart again, but every time Noah walked past it, he smiled. Because healing didn't always roar. Sometimes it tiptoed in with a crayon. That night, in the kitchen, Elizabeth found Noah humming. The same tune Claire had whistled before bed. She leaned against the counter. You really think she'll come back? She never left, he said, stirring lemon tea. She's just learning it's okay to come out from behind herself. Elizabeth exhaled. You make it sound so poetic. Pain usually is, he said. We just forget that the best poems are written in pieces, then healed with yellow. The judge was not unkind, just tired. And when judges are tired, they lean on rules. Ms. Carter, he said, I understand your concern, but the court requires behavioral assessment testimony to proceed with primary custody changes. Elizabeth nodded stiffly, but her heart dropped. Because Claire was the testimony. Noah sat on the wooden bench beside her in the long corridor of the Daly Center Courthouse. Claire sat between them. Her new dress was blue, her shoes velcroed twice. She held Lily's hand tightly. Not her mother's, not Noah's, only Lily's. Does she understand what she'll be asked? The court advocate whispered. Elizabeth sighed. We've gone over it. She doesn't have to speak. Just nod. That's all. The advocate shook her head. Some kids can't nod under pressure. One freeze, and it's done. Noah leaned in. Then let her freeze. But don't make her perform. Elizabeth shot him a look. This isn't a performance, Noah. This is protection. If I don't win full custody back, my ex-husband's attorney will pull her into a visitation schedule, and she's not ready. She's not a pawn, Noah said softly. She's a person. In the courtroom, Claire sat beside Elizabeth at the long table. She didn't cry. She didn't fidget. She just disappeared. Her gaze fixed on a point only she could see. The judge began. The attorney spoke. Then the court advocate gently said, Claire, can you tell the judge what helps you feel safe? No response. Claire, remember what we practiced? Just a nod if you feel okay. Claire blinked. Her head twitched slightly, then stopped. Her fingers began tapping the underside of the chair. Once, twice, 10 times. And then her shoes scuffed the floor. The lawyer turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I don't believe the minor is able to offer relevant behavioral input." But Noah stood, not from the gallery, from his seat in the back row. No suit, no legal tie, just a plaid shirt and scuffed boots. "Your Honor," he said, clearly and slowly, "I'm not part of this custody case, but I'd like to make a statement, not as legal counsel, but as witness to the girl's progress." Char. The courtroom murmured. The judge peered over his glasses. "State your name." "Noah Bennett." "Noah Bennett. Relation to the child?" "I mopped the floors in her mother's office." That silenced even the opposing attorney. "And yet you wish to testify?" "I've been present for 6 weeks," Noah said. "Every weekday, sometimes weekends. I have no authority, just presence." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Noah didn't approach the stand. He turned to Claire. "I saw you draw the sun," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You told Lily about the yellow shirt, and I saw the blue heart." Claire blinked. "I saw you scream," he said, "and I didn't stop you, because you had every right to scream. You weren't broken. You were grieving." He swallowed. "I don't know much about law, but I know people don't heal under pressure. They heal under presence." The room was still. No one interrupted. No one dared. Claire looked at him now, for the first time in front of others. And then she stood up. She walked to the front. No one asked her to. She didn't speak. She walked toward Noah, pulled something from her pocket, and placed it on the floor at his feet. It was a crumpled, tiny yellow paper sun. Then she walked back to her chair and sat down, not in collapse, but in calm. The judge cleared his throat. "For the record," he said, "the minor has demonstrated behavioral clarity through voluntary movement and symbolic representation." The opposing attorney opened his mouth, then closed it. After the hearing, Elizabeth stood with Noah in the hallway, stunned. "She's never done that. Not in front of strangers. Not voluntarily." "She wasn't performing," Noah said. "She was witnessing. Same as me." Elizabeth's lips trembled. "I don't think I could have done what you did." Noah shrugged. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for her." Elizabeth paused, then whispered, "I think I need to learn how to do that too." They walked out into the city light. Claire holding Lily's hand, Noah holding nothing. But inside him something had shifted, and in Elizabeth something had opened. Not power, not control, just space. For the first time, they were on the same side, not against the world, but with her. Claire stopped screaming, but she didn't start talking either. What she did instead was design. It began with a single question, asked in a whisper behind her mother's office door. "Can I move the rug?" Elizabeth turned. "What, sweetheart?" Claire's voice didn't rise, but her finger pointed, clear, direct. The rug, the corner, the light. "I want the corner to be yellow." Elizabeth's hands trembled as she nodded. "Yes, of course. We can make it yellow." Noah arrived the next morning with samples of felt, borrowed from a thrift shop and color-coded like a paint swatch. He laid them across the rug one by one. Claire didn't speak, but she touched them. Yellow stayed, blue too, red. She gently pushed away. Noah didn't ask why. He simply folded it, said, "Got it," and slid it back into his canvas bag. They called it the Claire room. It wasn't big, just an unused office storage space on the 18th floor, windowless, quiet, and lined with corkboard. But by week's end, the cork was pinned with circles of color, one yellow, two blue, a green triangle, and something that looked like a bird's wing. Claire had no words, but she had rules, and those rules were unshakable. Rule 1. Only Lily could bring the purple crayon. Rule 2. No shoes inside the room. Only socks. And socks must be soft. Rule 3. Noah could hum. Elizabeth could not. That last rule stung, but Elizabeth accepted it. Because it wasn't about exclusion. It was about consistency. In this room, Claire was the architect, not the patient, not the broken child, the designer of a space where her brain could finally breathe. One afternoon, Elizabeth brought in a tray of apple slices. She placed them gently on a yellow cloth and backed away. Claire stared at them, then pointed. "The apples are wrong." Elizabeth blinked. "They're organic. I double-checked." Noah, sitting in the corner watching quietly, said, "Is it the skin?" Claire nodded once. "They're red," he said gently. "Next time, green?" Claire nodded again. Elizabeth exhaled. "Green it is." No one clapped. No one cheered. But Claire reached for an apple slice and ate it. Each day, the Claire room grew. A bookshelf appeared with stories only Lily could read aloud. A beanbag chair, yellow, was placed precisely 17 inches from the wall. Noah taped a star above the door, low enough for Claire to touch. One day, Claire brought in a doll. It had no name, but she dressed it in a shirt made of paper, colored with the blue crayon. Elizabeth asked, "What's her name?" Claire didn't answer. But the next day, the doll had a name tag, Me. That night, Elizabeth sat beside Noah on the floor outside the room. "Do you ever wonder what she's building?" she whispered. Noah shrugged. "A place where her brain makes sense. She doesn't let me in." "You're still her mom," he said gently. "But maybe you need a door pass." Elizabeth looked down. "How do I earn one?" Noah smiled. "By waiting at the threshold, every day, without knocking." Later that week, something extraordinary happened. Claire invited Elizabeth in, not with words, with a gesture. She handed her a pair of socks, soft, lavender. Elizabeth took them, put them on, and entered the world her daughter had built. Claire didn't speak, but she sat beside her, shoulder touching shoulder, for 12 whole minutes, in silence, in belonging. That night, Elizabeth cried, not from sadness, but from awe. Her daughter had lost speech, but not sovereignty. And from the wreckage, she was rebuilding herself, with color, rules, and quiet love. In the hallway the next morning, Patrick Hale, the company's PR director, watched them exit the room. "Ms. Carter," he said, "some board members are asking questions about why you're using company space for..." This. Elizabeth straightened. Tell them it's a developmental project. For what department? She smiled. For humanity. And walked away, Claire behind her, and Noah beside them both. It only took 28 seconds. 28 seconds of leaked footage. Grainy, vertical. Likely recorded by an intern with too much ambition and not enough heart. The camera showed a small girl tracing a yellow sun on a corporate office wall. A whisper in the background. That's Claire Carter, Elizabeth's daughter. She's damaged, right? By morning, it was everywhere. From anonymous Twitter threads to wellness blogs to the New York Times sidebar. CEO converts office into child's therapy room. Mental breakdown or corporate rebrand. And the title that stung most. The CEO and her mute daughter. Inside the yellow room. Elizabeth didn't speak the entire ride to the office. Noah drove in silence. Claire sat in the back, her headphones on, coloring quietly in her sketchpad. But Elizabeth's phone vibrated nonstop. Board members, shareholders, PR teams, lawyers. By 9:00 a.m., she was summoned to the 22nd floor boardroom, and Claire's yellow sun had been painted over, without permission, without a word. You're not being fired, said Patrick Hale. Elizabeth didn't flinch. But the optics are difficult. I'm a mother, she said. Not a scandal. One board member, a silver-haired man with half-moon glasses, leaned forward. Elizabeth, you used our resources, real estate, and staff to... What? Build a therapy fort? Host art hour? Her voice was low but sharp. I built a life raft for a child who was drowning. Then build it on your own dime, someone muttered. Noah stood from the corner. I paid for the renovations. They all turned to him. You're just the facilities director. Not anymore, Noah said calmly. As of this morning, I'm interim VP of Internal Affairs. Check your emails. Silence, except for one soft chime as the emails arrived. Claire sat outside the glass boardroom, coloring blue spirals. A woman approached with a camera. Claire looked up. The woman crouched. Are you the quiet girl from the video? Claire didn't respond. The woman smiled. People love your drawings. Can you show me one? Claire stared, then slowly closed her sketchbook and whispered, No. Meanwhile, inside the boardroom, Elizabeth placed her palms flat on the table. No press statement, she said. No spin, no apology. You'll get crucified, someone warned. Then let them, she said. I won't shrink my daughter for shareholders. She turned to the head of PR. Release the full context. Every minute of footage. Not just the clip. The part where she built the room. Where she handed me socks. Where she whispered her first word in months. And what word was that? Asked the silver-haired man, almost mockingly. Elizabeth's voice cracked. Me. By noon, the company's official video went live. It was titled simply, Claire's Room, A Place to Breathe. It didn't go viral. It went global. Across America, inboxes flooded, not with outrage, with letters, from parents, from children who couldn't speak, from therapists, from janitors and nurses and teachers and artists. A single mother in Detroit wrote, "Thank you for showing the world that silence doesn't mean broken." A teenage boy in Wisconsin sent a photo of his green beanbag fort with a note, "I have a Claire room too. I call it mine." That evening, Claire watched from the couch. She didn't blink, didn't speak. But she reached for Elizabeth's hand and held it, hard, then whispered, "I don't like the red." Elizabeth blinked. "What red?" Claire pointed to the screen. The CNN logo. It was red. Too red. Noah walked in from the kitchen. "Want me to fix the screen settings?" Claire shook her head. "I want less of it," she said softly. "Not the logo, not the press, the world." So they unplugged the TV. Elizabeth sat beside Claire on the floor, and Noah brought in a new canvas. Blank. Ready. Claire smiled just a little, then dipped her brush in yellow. That night, on a podcast, a reporter asked Elizabeth, "If you had to rename your company now, after all this, what would you call it?" Elizabeth paused, then said, "Belong." The courtroom was colder than expected, not just from the marble walls and humming vents, but from the eyes. Eyes that whispered judgments without speaking. Eyes that saw a powerful woman with a troubled child and smelled scandal. Elizabeth Carter sat rigid, her hands laced tightly together as the opposing attorney spoke with slow, scalding precision. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about motherhood. It's about recklessness, misuse of power, emotional instability, and the well-being of a child who, by all evidence, has not spoken more than 3 words in months." Claire sat quietly behind her, a small figure in a pressed navy dress, sockless, because the court did not allow comfort items. Elizabeth's attorney rose. "This isn't about PR. It's about presence. It's about a mother who traded corner offices for corner forts, who didn't walk away, who stayed, in silence, with love." The judge, a woman named Honorable Ruth Minerva, leaned forward. "Is the child prepared to speak today?" Everyone turned. Claire looked up. Then, without a word, she stood. The courtroom hushed. She walked to the front, alone. Noah tightened his jaw. Elizabeth's hands gripped the edge of her seat, knuckles white. The judge nodded. "Claire, you may approach the bench." Claire didn't. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She opened it slowly, then placed it flat on the witness stand. A drawing. Gasps rippled through the room. It was a room drawn with colored pencil, a soft yellow rug, a beanbag chair, a window made of stars, and 3 stick figures. One tall with long brown hair, one with messy curls and glasses, and one small figure, in the center, surrounded by a soft circle. Above it a word, written in shaky crayon letters, "Safe." The judge leaned in. "What is this, Claire?" Claire's voice was barely above a breath. "My room." "And who are the people in it?" Claire pointed, then spoke 3 words. "Mom, Noah, me." Silence. Not courtroom silence, but something deeper. The kind of silence that descends when truth doesn't need a microphone. The opposing lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is emotional manipulation. Judge Minerva raised a hand. You'll be silent now. She turned to Claire. You drew this? Claire nodded. Why? Claire hesitated, then whispered, Because I don't know how to shout. Elizabeth began to cry. Not loud, just a single tear. Noah placed a hand on her shoulder. The judge took a breath, then turned to the courtroom. This court has heard enough. In her final ruling, she said, Love is not always loud. Healing is not always fast. But in my courtroom, a child who says safe and draws her family has been heard. She banged the gavel once. And with that, the case was closed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Flashes, questions, noise. But Claire didn't hide. She took Elizabeth's hand, then walked toward the cameras, and for the first time she looked directly into a lens and smiled. A journalist stepped forward. Claire, do you want to say anything to the world? Claire looked up, then reached into her bag once more. She pulled out a second drawing. This one had 4 words. Not broken, still building. It made headlines across the country. But for Elizabeth, it wasn't the headline that mattered. It was the way Claire slept that night. Peacefully. No light on, no door cracked, no monitor. Just the steady, quiet breathing of a girl who had finally testified. Not with her mouth, but with her entire heart. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe. Your support brings more healing stories to light. Just one click can make a world of difference for this small channel. Now, here's the final chapter, and the moment that changes everything. The first sign that something had changed wasn't the newspaper headlines. It wasn't the court ruling or the crowd of cameras waiting outside the courthouse. It was the sound of laughter, small, unexpected, and whole. It came from a window on the 2nd floor of the Carter Foundation building, where the lights were finally warm again. Claire was there, barefoot on a soft yellow rug, arranging pillows into a circle. Noah sat beside her, his glasses slipping down his nose as he tried to balance a stuffed giraffe on his knee. And Elizabeth? She wasn't at a desk. She was planting basil. The rooftop garden hadn't existed 3 weeks ago. But since the trial, something in her had shifted. Less ambition, more earth. She liked the feel of soil on her fingers. It reminded her that not everything powerful had to be digital, optimized, or delivered quarterly. Some things, like healing, grew slowly and needed sunlight. She looked up when she heard the door creak. It was Lucas, still in his janitor uniform, still carrying a mop. But now, everyone knew his name. You know, he said gently, that kid drew a better courtroom than any architect ever has. Elizabeth smiled. She draws the world she wants. We just built it. Lucas nodded, then paused. There's something downstairs you should see. The elevator opened on a freshly painted hallway where sunlight spilled in through frosted glass. On the wall, in soft block letters, were the words, The Claire Room, a therapeutic space for children who speak in color, not volume. Below it, not what happened to you, but what helps you feel safe. Elizabeth stopped walking. There were no press releases, no launch party, Just 3 bean bags, a miniature library, a window with removable stars, and soft cotton socks in a woven basket, and in the center, Claire, quietly drawing. She asked if she could help name it, Lucas said. Then she wrote something on the wall. Elizabeth stepped closer. In the corner, in uneven handwriting, were 4 words. This room breathes love. Later that evening, Elizabeth sat beside Claire on the floor of the Claire room. Outside, the rooftop garden shimmered in the golden light of a New York sunset. Lavender, tomatoes, thyme, and one stubborn sunflower, already tilting toward the sky. Claire placed a crayon in Elizabeth's hand. "Your turn," she said softly. Elizabeth blinked. "To draw?" Claire nodded. Elizabeth hesitated, then began. Her drawing wasn't perfect, a little crooked, but it had 3 stick figures, one tall with a brown bun, one with curly hair and crooked glasses, one small, arms wide open, and this time, around them all, not a circle, but a garden. Claire looked at it for a long time, then smiled. "I like it when we grow things." Elizabeth leaned her head on Claire's shoulder. "So do I." The weeks that followed weren't easy, but they were honest. Noah launched the Foundation's new trauma-informed curriculum into 6 school districts. Lucas became the first director of facilities and child advocacy at the Carter Center, wearing both his MOP badge and a suit jacket. And Elizabeth? She left the boardroom, not in disgrace, but in intention. "I'll still lead," she told her former colleagues, "just from the floor, with the kids, where real empires begin." They didn't all understand, but it didn't matter. She'd found her compass. Months later, on a windy spring day, Claire stood in front of a classroom in Brooklyn. A guidance counselor had invited her to speak to other children navigating trauma, not with a microphone, with crayons. "Today," she said, her voice stronger now, "we're going to draw rooms." A hand shot up. "What kind of rooms?" Claire smiled. "The kind that breathe." The children began to draw, some with windows, some with stars, some with gardens. None the same. And every single one safe. That night, as the city pulsed and roared below them, Claire curled into bed. No monitors, no light on. Just the hum of tomato vines above, the soft sway of basil through the window, and the quiet rhythm of 2 hearts breathing in sync across the hall. Elizabeth closed her laptop, where a draft grant for trauma-informed spaces blinked back at her. But instead of working more, she did something radical. She turned it off, stepped into Claire's room, knelt beside the bed, and whispered, "Thank you." Claire stirred. "You're welcome," she murmured, still half asleep. And then, smiling, "Let's grow more tomorrow." If this story warmed your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us bring more healing, hope-filled stories to life. One little click means the world to us. Subscribe now to join our journey at Little Light Stories.